right, everybody, welcome back to part 4. We have covered inventory and examples and sources. We have covered an inventory technique, and we have talked about a strategy for when to know it's the right time to work on a particular piece of technical debt. Now we're going to dive into some tools. This is the first of several tools. I have my lightning shirt on. Up till now, we haven't really use Salesforce, and I've got my community. I've got my community coffee cup here. Oh, sorry. I've got my community coffee cup all set to go. So we're going to dive in. Now, it's a funny thing that I might say automation can help you with technical debt, or automation tools can help you with technical debt, but Salesforce tools do provide ways of helping you manage debt. So we had something go wrong, and I'm going to use a real world example. And the first thing I did was I wrote a report to detect it. Yes, I could have searched around for example records, and I could have used a list view, and I could have done a lot of things, but reports are the right way to go because they have all the right filter tools and cross filter tools and conditions, and they can stay with you, and that's important. You'll see why later. And then I use Lightning Flow to fix some of the damage done by the technical debt that occurred in our solution. And then I used a scheduled dashboard to make sure it doesn't come back and that we pay attention to it in the future. So here we go. A real world example. Something broke in our org. We use a multi-pick list string to determine ethnicity per some government guidelines. So it's kind of a mess. But we need a way to create a nice user-friendly handle for ethnicity so that when we're choosing clients during program delivery, we can easily find the right client. Turns out this is because we don't have legal names a lot of times. We just know Joe, who's male apparently, and who's his white Hispanic apparently, and is about 25 years old. And we have to pick that Joe out from a list of 10 or 12 Joes. And so ethnicity string is a really important variable that affects my users a lot. And they came to me and said it was broken and it wasn't working right. And I didn't really know what they meant, but I wrote it down, and then I had time to work on it, and we started scratching our heads to what's going on. And I found a report to find the problem. I did find the root cause. And then I fixed the root cause, but now I was left with all the dirty data and a little bit of suspicion that other things could go wrong in the future too. So let me just walk through what I did. So I'm going to share, I'm going to share my Salesforce org, and we're going to walk through what happened or how to go about it. All right, here comes my org, I think. All right, and we have a global action called create a client, and I'm going to create a totally fake client here. So here comes a new client, and this is a quick action, global quick action. So the client's name, we're going to call it test so that I can get rid of it later. And they are Hispanic white. So I'm going to pick that. And this is a multi-select pick list because the fields are governed by government mandates. And this person appears to be female in front of me. And I've had enough conversation to know that they love dancing. And I don't know their legal names. Oh, I missed their age, which is a real important one. And they appear to be 19 years old. So that's what we're going to do to create a client. So I've created the client, and now I'm actually going to go show you that client. So test who likes dancing, and see, we have another test that's already in there. So it's important to be able to distinguish between the two. So, and by the way, you're looking at Einstein search. If you've never used Einstein search, you're making a terrible mistake, because look at, just by typing in test, I can see that we have several things called test. There's 2 clients called test. One has a passion of dancing, the other has a test of testing. I'm not sure which it is, but I know this one's new. This one has a relationship to somebody else. I can look at that. This test dancing is brand new, so I'm going to click on it. But Einstein Search already gives your users a ton of stuff. If you haven't turned it on, you really ought to. That's some technical debt you can put in your list. So right here at the top, you can see that test, parenthesis, dancing at street youth, 19-year-old Hispanic, white, female, last served 0 days ago. They've attended 0 events. We've served them 0 hours. And so you can learn a lot of information right at the top of the screen. And what my clients were talking about is the ethnicity string is embedded in that. You can't put a pick list in the middle of a string. This is actually the highlight panel, and the string itself is a formula field. And you can't just put the multi-pick list string in there. It doesn't work that way. So, and what was happening, for whatever reason, the process that translates from ethnicity pick list to the ethnicity string was broken. All right, so let me go back to my my report. Sorry, let me go back to my report. I built a report to find this condition. And at first I was kind of skeptical that it existed. I thought something else was wrong, but I thought, well, I'll make sure, because they were saying that the ethnicity string isn't showing up. And it's like, well, it has to, because it comes straight from the pick list, I thought. But it doesn't. Turns out it comes from a process builder. We ran into trouble that string is so big that we ran into compile size issues for the formula that builds that string. And so we cheated and put the ethnicity part of it in a process builder so that it's done once every time the process builder changes. So I built a formula, I built a report, shows me all accounts, and it's a count and contact report. I set the focus to all accounts. And in this case, I wanted, things that were created recently, but I could say all time now. Create date, all time. Remember that reports come with they come with these mandatory filters, so you're kind of stuck with them. So I'm going to be looking at contacts, all of them, all time, where the ethnicity is not equal to empty, ethnicity being a multi-pick list select, and ethnicity string is blank. And on my outline of my report, I've chosen to show the contact ID, the ethnicity, and the ethnicity string. I don't need anything else. So we're going to save and run that report. And I hope it comes up 0, because I believe I fixed this problem already. But in my initial investigation of this, it came up with hundreds of contacts that had this problem. And that shocked me. And I looked at the last modified dates of some of these, and it went back all the way till October or November of last year. So we broke this sometime October or November last year. I started looking into how it happens, and it turns out that string is set in our contact handler of Process Builder. We're following more or less the idea that we have one handler, and you can see that in fact it was modified the same week, the end of October, beginning of November, and that change is what broke it. And it had been broken ever since, and the 16th is the day I fixed it. And, just so you can see what's going on there a little bit, it's a big, long process builder, that works on the contact. All right, has the person, passed away? If so, we deal with it. If they are in fact deceased, we deal with opting them out of any outbound marketing. And if they're deceased and a client, we set an outcome. And then there's a bunch of nodes having to do with outbound marketing, and are they joining lists? And are they joining text lists? And, you can see, but somewhere way deep down in here is the ethnicity filled in, has an action of update the ethnicity string by formula. It's just a formula. It's not magic. It updates the string to a combination of Hispanic and Native American and so on. And we do that so that we can format a little nicer than Salesforce would if we just said turn that ethnicity multi-pick list into text. So that was broken. I found out why and I fixed it, but that left me with all the data that was not okay. And so typically I would have to go deal with it. And I got to admit, this process builder works only if the ethnicity was changed. And for a long time, it was turned off. So ethnicity string and ethnicity pick list could be out of sync. And so that I'm a little concerned that it might even be more errors than just an empty string, which is what the users noticed. There could be some wrong strings in there. So I turned next to flow. I found the problem, I fixed it, but now my report says I've got, hundreds of records that are busted. And I've got the nagging idea that it might come back. So I turned to flow next. I turned to an auto launch flow because I don't want the user to be involved in this with screens and the like. And I created a auto launch flow that is scheduled. And here it is. You can see all of them. In case you haven't been in flows lately, you now have the ability to create list views. And so this is my auto launch flows. And let's see. Fix update ethnicity string is it. And I scheduled it to run once. And it's an auto launch flow. So let me go ahead and open it up. I've done that for you over here. It's a very simple flow, and I created it from scratch as I was fixing this problem. But it's an example of dealing with technical debt. I'll give you even a better example that's not really like broken in a minute. But in the start field, I said I want it to run on the object, and I want it to run if the ethnicity string is empty and if ethnicity is not empty. So we set some values, but they didn't end up in the string. So they happened while this process builder was broken. That's what I want to do. This is very powerful if you haven't been to flow lately. You get to say that scheduled flows run on certain criteria. But your flow only deals with one record at a time. Salesforce takes care of all the batching and all the bulkification. It's really cool that way. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And all this one just has one node. And notice I'm using the auto layout feature. So if I wanted to add a new node, I say I can put something right there before, and I pick what it is I can add. But I just want to show you what I did. All we're doing is updating the one record. And so let me show you what it does. I want to update a record. And I have the ID of it already. It came in when this flow was started. I didn't do anything to find it. It's just the record it's the contact ID of the record that came in. And all I want to do is set the ethnicity string to a formula. That's all this flow does. That one node is the only node I added to be able to update the flow based on other fields in the flow. And the formula itself is right there. And you might recognize that it's exactly the same formula as was in my process builder, although I did cut and paste it into my text editor and change the context. The context of process builder has a slightly different way of referring to the record in flow that's different from flow. So I just had to change the way the record context is referred to, but the statement itself is exactly the same. So that's all this flow does. And then I set the flow to run at a certain time, which is right back on the start element. And running a flow once is a new feature, and you can schedule it to run, at a certain time on a weekend if it's a large fix and you don't want any users in the database, or you can schedule it to run 2 or 3 minutes from right now, which is what I did. I was doing this at 2:10 on January 16th, and I set the scheduled runtime to be 2:13 and saved it so that Salesforce would have enough time to queue it all up and realize, oh, it's time to run that. And it ran it on every record and fixed them all. And so now I have an empty report over here. And when my users go to the contact as they expect to, they see the ethnicity string where it belongs. So that's a little crazy that I did all of that, but it wasn't quite finished. There's a little more to do. Because I have a nagging suspicion that this problem might come back in the form of, while it was broken, I'm worried that it might not have updated some strings that aren't blank. I decided to put this into my wall of Xero dashboard. So let me show you what that looks like. I have several, and right now we're on 2 because you can only put 20 elements in a dashboard. A wall of Xero is a concept for maintenance or management of your database that everything on the dashboard is just a metric, it's just a number. And the idea is to come to this once a month. In fact, I schedule it to come out once a month. If you had more data activity, you might schedule it to come out once a week. But it comes to my inbox once a month, and I'm expecting everything to be 0. For example, Facebook donors, when people give to us through Facebook, we get their Facebook profile link. We may not know anything else about them, but we know that link. And so if we have a contact that has given through Facebook, but we have not recorded the Facebook link, that's considered an error and we want to fix it. And so we have a report that shows that up, and we flag this to whoever created the users, whoever created those, and start doing that. Perhaps one day it's part of our technical debt to say we don't have processes to automatically catch that when somebody is entering a Facebook donation, if the user doesn't have a Facebook profile, that it's kind of a foul. But if we go down here to the bottom of this page, we are going to find that there is a report that's empty that actually is the same report we just looked at. It's the ethnicity string report, and it's going to come out of PIMPI. I have added that report to my dashboard so that every month I'm going to get reminded that this is supposed to be 0. And it's not showing an error right now because we edited the report. If I hit refresh, that error is going to go away, and we're going to see something else appear, a 0 or no records. But so that's the next to last step. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the presentation. There is one final, well, actually, there's one final step, and it's to go to my technical debt. I have now created a question mark in my mind. So under CRM, I'm going to add that the ethnicity multi-select data is translated in the string needed for reporting by process builder. We also have a schedule flow that can do this. One day we need to reconcile that, right? If we change the way one works, we have to deal with the other, and that's kind of bad for long-term cost of ownership. It's not bothering anybody yet, but I want it to be there in the notes here that one day we need to retire that. If we ever get asked to change the way ethnicity works, I would like to get rid of this problem by having only one place where the ethnicity string is set. And I would do that by making the flow that we just looked at not scheduled, but record triggered. And I would remove the node from process builder so that there's only one place it's being set, and it's being set every time the contact is updated. Okay, so that's kind of how that worked. If we go back to the presentation, we can have a look at what else we have to see there. And then I've got a little bonus for you. I'm going to share the presentation again. Takes a second for that to come back up. I'm sorry. But here we are. And if we click through all the slides we've already covered. So we've seen how I used report flow and a scheduled dashboard to help me with this technical debt. And you could say it was a bug, but it also could have just been, I knew it wasn't ideal and I wanted to fix it. We walked through that. first we created the report, and you saw how wonderful Lightning Report Builder is. It's very fast, very easy. We built a flow that only runs when I tell it to on a schedule. And by that, I mean it runs once at the time I tell it to. Unfortunately, they don't have a manual thing that says run now, but close enough. You can schedule it 2 or 3 minutes in advance, and it works just fine. And I had one simple node in this to implement my change. And I scheduled it to run once, and did, and it fixed my whole database. And then I verified it was fixed, and I added the report to show it's fixed to my scheduled dashboard. And then I returned to my inventory update. And that was how we fixed it. I used almost exactly the same process to fix something else yesterday. I told you we have we have 2 ways of recording donor advised funds, and it's kind of sloppy. And we made a governance decision that we're only going to record it in one way, but we don't guide the user to do that. And so we are now guiding the user to do it the right way now. We enter the donation like we would a regular organization. And then because it's an organizational button, there's a flow button on the screen that says convert this to donor advised fund. And it pops up a screen. It asks them who the donors are. It asks what the description should be, and it takes care of all the changes underneath. And once we made that governance decision, I had 2 ways of doing the same thing in the database. And so I wrote a report to determine how many times we had done it the way that is considered less than ideal now. And it was 14 times. And so I wrote a flow, that's the flow button, right? And then I went to each record and I pushed that flow button. In this case, it was a little bit manual because you had to make a couple of decisions during the flow interview. But you can see that by choosing to use flow, first of all, I did it right all 14 times. By choosing to use a report, I can prove I got rid of the old way completely. And by putting it on the Lightning page for the organizational layout, I was able to tell all new users and existing users there's only one way to do it. First, enter the donation, and then click the convert to DAF button, and it will go. And so I'm able now to go update my technical debt under donor transaction column to say that we have addressed this and it's fixed now. And that's really awesome. And we regenerated the 11 receipts that weren't accurate enough and sent them out, and already got a very positive response from the one donor who was concerned that we had left them off of her giving report. It caused her to worry that that money hadn't been given to us or hadn't been used properly, or we had not noticed. So that brings up the next topic that we're going to talk about next, which is governance. And I will say bye for this step.